Magandang araw, Podmates. Our guest today has gained global fame from simple solutions to big problems. Illac Diaz is the founder of Litre of Light and the My Shelter Foundation. Congratulations on everything you've been doing, Illac. Magandang araw sa'yo.
Thank you very much, Howie. It's really small things that people do to make the Philippines, and of course with our climate change situation, more resilient, for the future.
Okay, Illac, before I ask you about your various causes, I need to ask you about your name. No? I've long been intrigued by it. Every time I see it. So how did your parents come up with Illac?
Well, my mom established one of the longest running art galleries, modern art galleries in the Philippines, Galeria Duemila. And her love, of course, for history and art was very strong. And so when she had her firstborn, she looked for something that meant something to her. I was hoping, of course, for many years of my life, because you know how they teased me with my name, especially in Ateneo, that it was something like John or Joseph. But she chose Illac. And this happened to be because at the time she was reading a book on Aztec Inca, the Aztec Inca. And she came across the word Illac, which was one of their deities. But it turns out that Illac means God of light. So up to today, my mom says, "Remember when you hated your name?" So now who's right? Who's right?
So you're not one of those kids who decided to change his name and tell all his friends to call you something else from something different from what you grew up with. So you stuck to it.
Well, actually, my second name is my grandfather's name. You know how we all have backup names. So his name was Angelo. But by the time grade 2, when I realized I could ask them to change my name, Ateneo kasi you stick to your class, the same class throughout. And so I said, "Look, call me Angelo." And said, "Ano, Angel? Hindi ka naman Angel." So Illac stuck. So that's it, and that's the story.
Okay. Well, the other thing that intrigues me is your background, your uncommon life journey. Your mom is Silvana Diaz, who is an Italian-born artist. Your father, of course, is Filipino, si Ramon Diaz, who's also an artist. But you don't just come from an artistic family. You come from a showbiz family, Illac, the Diaz family. It's a famous showbiz family. It's Gloria Diaz, a former Miss Universe. It's your tita. You're a former model. You went to the best schools. I mean, you've had a pretty charmed life, Illac. But now you're into grassroots work. You're in fact working with plastic bottles. Para sa ibang tao, ano yan? Basura yan. So it's not exactly the most glamorous kind of grassroots work. So in a nutshell, ano ba yung backstory ni Illac Diaz?
Well, at that time, I was studying, and I was also doing apprenticeship. I finished grad school, pursued my degree. I'm an urban planner, and of course, later on, I took public administration. But I didn't have that much money. My family really in the arts. My mom was starting out. She was a stewardess when she arrived and met my father in the Philippines. At that time, though, stewardesses had as you said, a charmed life. At that time, only the very wealthy would travel and go to the most exotic. They traveled to travel, and so Manila, of course, was the exotic place to be, and that was the end destination of Alitalia, the Italian airline. And so when she met my father, she basically had to start something, and arts was something in her blood. So she started as an apprentice, interior. While I was in her tummy, she would finish her interior design. To look for a new life in the Philippines. So yes, but one of the things that I had, which was lucky, was Gloria Diaz, my auntie, who was very generous, and Rio Diaz, who was Eat Bulaga, also a star. And I was, wanted some additional income. And so they said, look, besides your studies, do you want to model? And just like any young man, I wanted extra income. And so that's what happened. I was a regular student, and then at night I would get run over by a car, or I would get shot. You know how it starts out with showbiz is you're always yung biktima or one of the stand-ins.
Saan ito sa mga teleserye? Ano what parts did you play?
Speaking roles, whatever I could get. Come to class like 7:00 in the morning. It was a double life. But what I would do in one talk show or one Saturday hosting would be the same amount of money I would earn for my plates, for my month's salary. So I did enjoy it, but I didn't forget my studies. But of course, I was not the best student because I was having this dual life, and I wanted it. My dream was to use the money to travel and, of course, get educated. And I wanted to save up to study in a foreign school. And at the time, my parents were, we were still that struggling. So yeah, I did live a dual life, but it was fantastic. It was fantastic. At night, I didn't know who I was going to be from week to week, and I loved that kind of opportunity. I didn't. It was something that gave me a view into two lives.
Okay, so you were actually on a very promising career trajectory as an artista, no? So what changed your career path?
As usual, tunong-dunong. Oh my God. Atenista talaga.
Tulong-dunong, okay.
Tulong-dunong. There was a professor that was asking everybody to write their hopes and ambitions, no? And so everybody wrote down, and he opened up one of the sessions. Says, "Look, I've read all of your aspirations, and I want to say this: everything is right. No, your ambitions are right. It's very good. You want to be, a better architect, furniture designer, world leader. But he said, how is it that the brightest in this class, the brightest of the nation, naman they exaggerate, wants to make life better for those already that have so much in life? What about those that will never be able to come into your office to ask for a better life for themselves?" Which was at that time, a staggering more than 50% was really in the poverty. He said, "Look, success is not that you're not successful. No? Make yourself a success, but also have an ambition to bring people along with you, and that's the way this country will have, a better living." Will have better living conditions. And so that really impressed me.
Yeah, Illac, I'll just backtrack a little bit kasi nabanggit mo yung tulong-dunong. No? Tulong-dunong is a program for high school seniors in Ateneo High School. No, it's a part of the curriculum where all the high school seniors go to public schools to tutor. No, but it's actually part of their education. They're exposed to people who are kids who are less advantaged. So you were exposed to communities, to public school kids, and then parang pinaprocess nyo sa classroom yung mga reflections nyo. Tama ba yun?
Well, definitely. And it was wonderful. I mean, for me, I really saw going there, looking at the way people live, going into their houses, and it was wonderful. I mean, for me, I really saw going there, looking at the way people lived, going into their houses. I knew the value of money, and there were people that were living even as I said, a low income, and that opened my eyes, and I became very good friends. So yes, it changed me, and I started putting up like small services even beyond that. My spot was Marikina. And also do more work with sign language, where I would teach math and sciences to the next door. You just jump across to the deaf and mute for math and sciences.
So you were tutoring the deaf and mute using sign language. Okay.
Yes.
That's a very unusual.
I think sign
It's
language.
very
Yes,
unusual.
I remember. Yes, I still have friendships among them up to now.
So, habang nag-aartista ka, you had this experience in mind. Describe your shift. Paano ka nag-shift? Sabi mo nga, you're thinking of solutions to poverty, and you think about global problems, no, and not just your own little world. So, medyo you've evolved quite a bit. No? So, tell us a little bit about that. Paano ka naging social entrepreneur?
So I guess that formula, no, that be successful but bring people along with your success was still very much imprinted in my mind when I was starting to get better gigs. I also did like the international route, so I went around Southeast Asia and really saw the disparities between how I was living and all the privileges. Another tunong-dunong thing is if you don't do something, if you don't extend your hand, then you're making it more difficult for somebody else to give their share. Give your share, give matched with your privilege or access, and that little counts, no, and little or more counts. So this is where I started realizing that I should keep that. So I started out, of course, like with any young person. When I did have money, I volunteered. When I had money, I would donate, and then I would join these outreaches that were not mine. Whatever corporate would join, and that's where I realized I really could do something. And the big part of the shift really was uh, I attended this event where an international NGO was speaking, and they were showing about pictures of the Philippines and about poverty. There's a low income area right next to the bigger cuts of land, and I've never seen kids that were dirty, with insects. The way that you present Filipinos. What does the world think about us? And I've not seen I've not seen the Filipinos that you're explaining to me. So I got very insulted. And one of the things he said when I kept on pestering, he said, we don't get that much donations by presenting a healthy, happy Filipino right into my face. So that's when I said to him, you know what, one day I'm going to build a foundation that's going to show that Filipinos are not just the victims, not just receiving money, because what will the world think about this begging, always troubled society? I said, that's not true. We're progressive. I'm very proud of it. So I told him I'll build a global organization. Of course, not knowing what a global organization was. And me, I'm very determined, just like my track and field, just like I wanted the best for myself. But I also felt that there was an international opportunity for Filipinos to do humanitarian work, to be not only greatest boxers, beauty queen like my auntie, but also that we can be respected more by filling in a niche. As I said, I mostly saw white Caucasian saviors. They're the heads of the NGOs. But remember, I was also part of these volunteer networks. So I saw that the staff and everybody there were Filipinos, but the only one I see was them. And I said, why can't I see all of these great stories of giving yourself to humanity? But where was the brown collar? Where was where was us? And yet all the staff, the whole army was Filipino. I said, this is we should represent ourselves better in this world. And so that's why I started looking for something that I was skilled. And as I said, in urban planning, my love was really alternative architecture and disaster resilient planning. That was where I started.
Okay, so of all the things you could have done, no, to give back, to do humanitarian work, how did you end up working with plastic bottles and using them to provide light, no, yung light sa mga bahay, no, itong Litre of Light or isang litrong liwanag, no, sa Tagalog, no. So paano nag-evolve 'yon?
Isang litrong liwanag was you could say my second foundation. The first foundation, three. The first one was Seafarer Center in Intramuros, where for 50 pesos a night, you don't have to travel to Luneta from the remote, from all these corners. You can have a good shower. There was a job board. Wala pang internet noon.
Para sa mga seaman ito, no? Yung mga
Yeah.
mga migratory seamen na walang matirhan sa Maynila.
Yeah. I realized that philanthropy was not for me, where, as I was trying to think of building these global organizations, I realized that a lot of Filipino NGOs, including the one I was learning how to put up, could not rely on this model of waiting for money or begging for money to do good. That's where social enterprise at its beginnings, really, where people would pay me to be able to help them, and I would be able to, like any sari-sari store, start with something small, and then it would grow. So later on, I started building classrooms, bamboo, soil, plastic bottles. Remember, I was trying to build an organization, and I didn't come from a very wealthy family. So I same thing with social enterprise is I started to look for materials that were abundant. Cement, steel, and glass from what you would call manufactured materials from hardwares were one of the most expensive ways for me to contribute. And of course, using that bote, that those thousands of plastic bottles that people threw, that this would be bricks, no? You would fill it up with what is called stabilized earth with a little bit of cooked lime and earth. It would be a brick, no? So Howie, when I was trying to build the organization, I said, look, I have this world conquering in mind, but I don't have the money. What's it gonna be? So I had to look for trash. Or something that would be the foundation of building thousands of schools. And this is where I went. Now, one of the things that I did not have along with bricks was glass. Glass was really expensive. Flat glass, yung window, no?
Yeah.
And so one of the ways I would do it is I would fill bottles of water and put it in between the plastic bottle bricks. And so this would let light in, especially if I'm on the mountain, to let light into the school. Later, of course, that evolved into plastic bottles on the metal sheets. So that way, I would have the whole side facing the sun to let light through the schools. Of course, even if I built the schools, the energy distributor or the energy company, wala pang solar dati, would not want, or it was not economically viable to go there. Now, one of the things, of course, besides glass was plastic bottles. Now, this is where the transition came. What about at night? At that time, I don't know if you remember it, there were 3 shifts in the school, one in the morning, one in the afternoon, and then the evening, no? So I was saying, what about the night? And that's where I transitioned into solar energy. So right now I had plastic bottle windows, fill it up with water, put bleach to stop the growth of algae, and it would bounce, and refraction. These are things that you learn in school.
So nakita mo yung need nito, no? Because obviously, you started building classrooms and structures kasi meron kang My Shelter Foundation. But of course, hindi siya masyadong useful kung walang ilaw, no? So you had to develop a way of lighting up these places, no? So itong technology na to, it's a form of passive solar, no? Pero you started evolving into a more active solar energy, meaning you started using batteries kasi sabi mo nga sa gabi. Of course, you were not able to store the light you were absorbing during the day, so pang-araw lang yung technology na yan. So ngayon, ano na yung status nito? Because when you started, very limited pa yung kuryente sa maraming lugar, no, sa Pilipinas. But now, of course, more and more communities are being connected. And how are
That's
you
ano,
evolving
that's
now with that, no? And of course, solar energy itself is evolving, no? Mas mura na ngayon yung technology, ang solar panels, mas mura na ngayon. So, do you think itong mga litres of light, itong mga plastic bottles technology na inintroduce mo sa mga maraming lugar, is it becoming outdated na?
well, you know, I could go on and say, first of all, 13 million pa rin sa Pilipinas don't have access to electricity. When you say connected communities or 100 connected communities, there's always a variance, no? There's always an interpretation. So having lights that reach the barangay hall and a couple of houses is not commensurate to the fact that there is a growing population. Howie, when you say connected, you should really talk about the percentage of people with actual connections. When you say, of course, a growth in solar fields or windmills, you also have to qualify the fact that most of these are heavy finance, very expensive, and also you have to repay them. No, they don't give this thing free. So just like hydro, it usually flies over communities that actually own the land or are poor communities from there, and they go straight to the cities which pay for it. So there's still that interpretation that just because we have power plants, that doesn't mean that everybody can afford the electricity rates, and therefore they don't give free electricity along the way. This is it's like a long power line straight to the city. And so you have to understand that we also need all kinds of technologies. Second, with solar in villages, is they're imported, patented, and they're expensive. That's great. If you could give 1 million solar lights today, that's great. But just because it's imperfect, the battery lasts maybe the ones that I see, they expend themselves, nickel cadmium, in about a year and a half. So you're gonna have to redo that million lights again. And so our role in Litre of Light is sort of that part where it's repairable, it's scalable. We use whatever we can. I use bamboo as the base of solar lights in the Rohingya communities that I serve. We use bamboo. In Africa, my Senegal, my Kenya, Congo, we use pottery. We use pottery as the base. In the Philippines, I use recycled PVC pipes because a lot of those are coastal communities, disaster areas. So I still believe that available parts from, of course, waste, and of course that you can purchase is a very DIY part of our operations. It's very important to build this kind of local grassroots rather than imported, patented, expensive, because I see a lot of that trashed. So when you go to schools and say, look, it's solar, you have to analyze. Even when Typhoon Haiyan, which was really a turning point in my career, when I went there, that one just received, I think, like $30 million worth of solar panels in schools. And when I was trying to revive them, many of them were broken after several years. So these kind of imported, patented, expensive have a limited life. And at that time, you would have to understand that the batteries needed to be replaced. And so how can you have a technology that was, that had a lifespan, but you didn't have facilities here to be able to repair it cheaply? And so that's where Litre of Light started saying, we do have all the parts. It's not like laser cut or built in factories into what is called microcircuits, which even me, I cannot fix. But you also go to China. So when I went to China, I realized that many of the solar panels that you built mga 2 watts. It's all hand built. It's all hand built. There are women that cut the solarettes with laser, and then they put it by hand and they solder it by hand from a 5-watt panel. They cut it, the 5 watts that you see on the solar panel, into what is called baby solaret. So it was like, wow, why are we insisting on already manufactured goods when there was a possibility to build longer term solar products locally? And so that's where Solar Power Philippines, where you could do backyard, your own small businesses, or Litre of Light, where you could serve the communities using, of course, readily found parts. But most importantly, you could build skills on a village. So my thing was, if you cannot fix this with a screwdriver in a village, or work with the woman cooperative to make yourself obsolete, then it's not a solution for us. So that was what started, and it grew all around the world, no, to serve those underserved communities.
Basically, yung sinasabi mo, often ang nagiging connected lang, nagkakaroon lang ng kuryente through the grid ay yung mga nasa sentro, like sabi mo nga, yung the barangay hall or maybe even the school. But a lot of the homes, especially in the outlying areas, hindi pa rin naabot ng itong bagong connections, no, sa mga communities. So even as the rural connections expand, there's still a need for small scale initiatives like yours, no? Itong standalone solar contraptions.
Well, you see this in the missionary funds, no? It's in your electricity bill. You're actually paying for that small little side electricity that's going to, and it's very much needed, no? That's where they charge their cell phones. It's very much needed, but I would qualify this 100% electrification. It needs what is called a mixed solutions, no? And a lot of it is renewable energy. Very much, Howie, that we're 7,100 islands, but also where Litre of Light started out becoming much bigger was into this emergency solar lighting. So Tacloban, which of course we will have an anniversary next year, the 10-year anniversary when I really started Litre of Light formally, was really that impetus, if you want to call it, to scale globally and around these critical places around the world.
Many of us know what happened. Thousands of people died. I was one of those who covered this disaster, no? I went there, talagang ang daming nawasak na bahay. People, people were just waiting for help from the outside world, and it was dark. Ang dami ng disaster sa Pilipinas, no? Pero bakit yung Typhoon Yolanda ang sinasabi mong turning point sa iyong career?
I was already doing climate resilient architecture, I was working with the United Architects of the Philippines. By the time I was already in grad school, I was mentioning already that most of the professors was talking about the increasing changes in climate. And one of the main engines was really the Pacific Ocean, where really with the heat being trapped, it was generating more and more energy to create these kind of superstorms. And I say superstorms is what happened on the 300 km/h winds. But so I was already doing at that time working with the United Nations to create these global competitions to design better housing, or if you want to call it more specifically, schools, because this is where people run to in case of emergency. So Litre of Light was already moving away from the daylight in a big way. We were already using simple circuitry. We did not have lights in our school, so we were teaching the mothers to spend time to build, to convert kerosene lamps. They would bring me the kerosene lamp, and I would bring, at that time, I would even scratch these metal plates to make simple circuitry. And they would bring the lights to the schools. And so there, I would start teaching the women cooperatives to rent out solar instead of sell kerosene. It was cleaner. I spent about a couple of months there, but I would buy parts from Cebu or Legazpi and build these solar lights with, at that time, they would have this thing called this handout payments, this payments. And so for work, for cleaning, for they would give people money for to be able to be part of the rehabilitation. And so one of the things I said is, why don't we just build solar lights? Luckily at that time, a soft drink company also had thousands and thousands of plastic bottles. They knew at that time, that I was the plastic bottle guy. Bamboo Bote, building schools and building. And said, can you do anything? We have a fund. And I said, yeah, I can build street lights. So I was already building street lights in villages from the school to the village to keep the kids safe. And so I used PVC, bamboo. The plastic bottle at the time, Howie, we would put the LEDs from motorcycles. So I used LEDs from motorcycles around the world. So if it breaks, you can go to your motorcycle shop. Especially in developing countries, motorcycles are very easy parts that to find in any village. So I would put them in the plastic bottles so they wouldn't get wet. And there, I built about 8,000 lights for tents. I didn't build them. I brought in the parts, and then we also started forming women cooperatives there that would build and repair and maintain the lights. So that was one of my first big contracts to be able to light up Tacloban. So there, I was there about 4 months in the area.
Kasi itong approach mo, no, it's intended not just to provide light, no, but also livelihood, no. So paano nangyayari to? They assemble these solar lights, and then nabebenta ba talaga to? I mean, who will buy them? I mean, a lot of people just expect dole outs, di ba? Yung lalo na pag alam nila galing sa labas, no? You're an outsider. You go in there, and don't people expect to be given these lights for free? I mean, what will motivate them to buy?
So this is where the problem of scale happened to me. At first, when I was working with the women cooperatives, I would give them the money to be able to start out their what we call a solar startup, where I would convert the kerosene lamps into solar, and then they can rent it out. No, so they rent out the solar panel and the light itself to a household, and they would collect from it. For the street lights, it would be solar, but the women would go around house to house and get a little bit of money from each. It's like Meralco, you just collect it. And then this would keep the villages lit, and of course light inside the house. If it breaks, they can repair it. They don't have to go to Manila. We would teach them how to use this. At that time it was LED. These solar batteries were already starting to become more relevant. Now, this is the trick. How could an organization start working with 300 women cooperatives? Because their husbands, would sell vegetables or fish to the city. So they would take their jeep or whatever they have, a small little truck. They would go to Manila, unload their vegetables, and of course go back home na empty, of course buy a few things for their wives or whatever the village, and then bring it back. So once they dump it in the wet market, we would have this free ride back to the villages all over the Philippines, I mean, as far as Visayas. So that would be the way that Litre of Light would operate, to maintain all of these solar lights without us having to have our own trucks to go to 300 villages. I was trying to build a solar DIY, work with the cheapest materials and build this solar grassroots movement using, as I said, an already available farm to market to and of course backhaul it back to these villages, and maintain it. So when Tacloban happened, I already knew how to be able to scale it. And so there, I was asked to light it up. Do you know? I co-wrote a paper. It's called Shrinking the Value Chain, and 60 to 80% of humanitarian funds go into logistics, 60 to 80, and this is UN numbers.
Mhm.
So you have to understand that in humanitarian work, that a lot of the traditional one of just providing it, or tinatawag na handouts, goes to move it from one side of the world to the other. In the Philippines, philanthropy is something great, but I mean, to get money is something good, but it seldom happens. That's why many NGOs don't really grow out of their extension of the house. Social enterprise is something where you do have to try to think. So what's the business model of it? First of all, is there's already money in the village, 35%. If you move that carbon-based dependency, not only is it a health, reduction in health risk, fire risk, but it also keeps the money in the villages by teaching them to go solar, right? Now that money can be now used for health, education, whatever the communities deem fit. What's also powerful is the women group now has greater income or greater resources. The way that I build up on that, or Howie, to build up more women cooperatives around the world, is something that, as I said, also inspired by Gawad Kalinga. This is where we engage with corporates. Now, what happens is, remember, Gawad Kalinga is they buy the materials, and then they engage the corporates to help build it, and then you have the houses built. So once again, I didn't invent it. What I did is sort of the Gawad Kalinga of solar. I get all the materials and the parts. I bring them into the corporate headquarters or schools or wherever I can get a donation. They pay for the materials. I charge them, for the experience of building it. You know what I'm saying? When you bring all the things there, they start building it. And then we charge them also to bring them to the villages to donate it. So that's the way I do it. I get these solar lights. I earn from putting together these corporate events, and then we donate them to the women cooperative. So it's not the traditional one where that solar lights are being sold to the villages. I don't deplete that. I actually get the donation of solar lights that I do through these corporate events. I donate them to new women cooperatives to shift out of kerosene so they can start renting it out. They also do, of course, now we have 101, the solar lamps, 102 is the mobile chargers, and 103 is the street light. So all of this goes into the women cooperative for free, and they make a business. Their own vacuum is they rent out the solar lights, charge for mobile chargers, and of course charge for the public lighting system. So there is no charge that there's it's a very if the corporates give me all the lights, I earn my 25% from that, and it gives me a whole batch of solar lights to start out this transition to clean energy in the villages.
Yeah,
Sila
you
na
mentioned
mag-
this shift from kerosene lamps to solar. Kerosene, of course, is not just a hazard from the fumes, but it's also a major source of home fires.
You have to start looking for new sources of energy, especially for rural communities, mountainous communities. You're talking about the 13 million person line. As I said, as we try to reach it, we have not invested that much into solar plants, into traditional coal and diesel plants to be able to match the growth in population. So we need more and more kinds of new ways of doing things. Now, one of the things that was much neglected is really this kind of, for the bottom, the bottom of the pyramid, which is how do you create a more sustainable clean energy system. We have to produce our own products. Basically. We have to start learning how to to create our own solar industry rather than buying everything wholesale, because they don't last.
Mm. Well, speaking of which, no, I want to ask you about scale, no? Kasi people, of course, need light. That's essential. Pero they also need to power their phones, their appliances, their laptops, water pumps, etc., which you can't do with plastic bottles. Do you have plans to scale up? Are you tempted to go into yung mga larger scale projects like solar farms or wind farms? The technology is becoming cheaper. It's evolving, becoming more accessible. Then, is that on the horizon for you?
Well, we're in 32 countries now. I have 212 staff in 32 countries. We have thousands of members
Wow.
that go with us. So we use the same business model that we do in the Philippines, where we engage with corporates. We affect about 1 million people a year, and so we have no single factory. We really go with the system where corporates or schools or events build solar lights, and then we donate them to women cooperatives that maintain them. One of the things that has grown is the women cooperatives can build it without us because they're so good at knowing how to fix it by hand, and of course their husbands, are also learning about it. So they go to the nearest town instead of sourcing it from us in the center city. These parts are mostly available. 18650s from vape batteries, used cell phone. A lot of the cities throw away just because your cell phone doesn't charge for one whole day. Most people throw away perfectly good cell phone battery that we can reuse. There's so many ways to skin this cat. No? So, but what's important to me is the technology must not lie in Litre of Light, but it must be contained in the people themselves, the institutional knowledge how to scale. Now, there are solar plants. Of course, this is something that we have different kind of small investments. So we invest some equity in it, but we are not in the solar plant business. We're still in the bottom-most approach. We work with women cooperatives from Kenya, Bangladesh, in this really really rural areas. It's still so much to do. So we're not scaling up from there. We're perfectly happy. But what we're doing, Howie, which is with a grant given by, as I said, Google, was now that we're able to stabilize power in villages through women cooperatives, maintaining the street lights, is we're putting small Raspberry Pis. We're putting a technology where we link the whole villages so that they can text each other across the village. We have workshops all around the world. For a soft drink manufacturer, we did it in 7 countries. For a green power company in Europe, and so we expanded around the world, doing this kind of sustainable build it yourself. And I could be here I'm expanding here in Australia. Remember, I was talking to you, 60 to 80% of operations, humanitarian operations, are with
Logistics.
logistics, right? So we make it that every country has a supply point without us having to be there. So in Africa, Kenya provides the solar panels. In my South America, so solar is becoming available, but solar products are still not given to the bottom line.
But Illac, sabi mo you're in Australia setting up an office there. No, Australia is not exactly a developing world country. Bakit kailangan ng project mo diyan? Or is that a kind of a fundraising or corporate center for your project?
So for Caribbean, Guatemala, Honduras, it's America that we fundraise. We do workshops there, and then those workshops raise funds for up to South America. In Italy, because my mother's Italian, we raise funds for Senegal, Kenya, Congo, and other places. But for climate hit communities, I need more money for my Rohingya operations, my India operations. And Australia is one of the richest, and I would say it's sophisticatedly green communities where there, for example, these superstorms are hitting Vanuatu, this kind of superstorms, whereas it used to hit the Philippines. Now they're moving eastwards. So islands that they used to fly over are now being hit. So as I said, these superstorms in Vanuatu, wiping them out. I started out in, I have island communities now. So I need money from this region.
Just want to start winding up by asking about your career as a social entrepreneur. No, I mean, a lot of young people might be listening to this. Is this a viable career, and is this replicable for other young people who want to think about things that are larger than themselves?
Well, the world does not work like, for example, I realized that, that help must come from Western technology. Like technology must be brought in to be able to solve. I think for many times, it's like waiting for Superman. It just never arrives. And so you can't wait for others to be able to help this kind of situation to bring up people, especially through the old ways, which is, charity, aid grants, bilateral agreement. I mean, the Philippines is one of the largest recipients of these kind of aids. But does it help, sustain, better lives for all? We need to have our own independent ways of doing it. And social enterprise for a Filipino has changed the world for me. I mean, starting out with the little funds that I had in the Philippines, growing it into this kind of international operations. But it's very exciting. I mean, in October, we were commissioned to light up the pyramids in Giza. So we're building it out of thousands of pottery and making a solar artwork by, in the pyramids. We are also, part of FIFA, the opening event. So what I'm saying is it's been the most exciting, it's a very exciting career. In 2019, we did a trip honoring, of course, the 500 years of the Magellan trip. We took a 100-day trip around the world on the boat. And every port that we landed along the route of Magellan, we would light up the communities, at Madagascar, South Africa, South America. We even went all the way down to, Magellan Straits in Chile, the island communities, Easter Island. So we went around the world. It's very exciting. It's because that, that every month or every week, you have clients that bring in money. The only thing about social enterprise is you cannot touch the equity. You give yourselves a salary and that's it. The nice thing about social enterprise is you're not going to end up as a begging to do good in the world. There are people that financially will be able to work with you. You earn, and at the same time, you can hire good people. So for young people around the world, especially the way that, you've known NGOs in the Philippines, to be begging and poor and always asking for funds. I mean, we do ask for help, but, it's shared value with social enterprise. It's very empowering. It's very exciting. And, as I said, once you start going global, where there are solutions in the Philippines that are needed south. There are solutions in the Philippines that are needed around the world. I mean, I'm a plastic bottle guy, and yet I'm relevant in many places around the world that don't have access to light. Started in the Philippines, but is going global. And we can become global. You start coming out with films where Philippines are always victims, or, foreign-based funded films where, they only focus on the bad things about the Philippines. They start treating you badly because of that's the way that you talk about yourself. But I wanted to show us as different. And so we, with social enterprise, I realized that there's funds, and that we are richer. I live a richer life. You can grow from that small operation to a global operation, and still live a good life. Of course, you have to understand. My car, it's a 1995 Nissan Safari. I had it for 25 years. It works very well. I don't need to buy a new car. There are some kind of life choices that I have to do. And when I got graduate school abroad, I had to apply 3 times because my salary level was not But I did enter in some of the best schools in the world. It's just, people will give you chances as long as you're doing good with those chances that you give. I married late. I married last year.
Congratulations.
There are some choices, but just like everything else, it's a very fulfilling life. It's now a global life. I flew from Boston to Dubai, from my New Jersey office to my Dubai office now, and I'm flying here to try to put up a new office here. But the world is large, and I have 212 wonderful staff. They're young people. I lost, as I said, I lost 2/3 of them during COVID. Now rebuilding, but it's incredible, and also because in the end, it's what you leave back in the world. And I think that since I come from I said, privileged life, privileged connections, it's exciting to use that for the greater, humanitarian good. As I said, I could easily have bought something with the money I was earning, but I like it better this way.
How long do you think you'll be doing this?
Well, it's a mixed blend, no. So now that I'm married, I'm putting more money into investments. As I said, I've always had a good head on my shoulders, invested in companies, invested in land. I'm not silly, no, that I will rely on this kind of salary all the time. Like just like COVID, you never know if something like this will hit you. But I do have a steady income from other investments. You have to, but I love the job that I have. But I have to make sure that I have other what you would call passive income, rich dad, poor dad stuff.
Okay, well, on that personal note, Illac, we'd like to thank you for your time, for sharing your story, and for what you're doing for the world. Mabuhay ka, Illac Diaz, founder of Litre of Light.
Thank you for letting me tell this story. Now, if I can make a global operation out of Mambobote, International Mambobote, I can imagine the new young people what they can do for the world. So very excited for the next Filipinos to show the world that we're not just victims and handout, or we just copy programs abroad. No, we're copy paste, but we can create our own.
Salamat, Illac.
Hi, I'm Howie Severino. Check out the Howie Severino Podcast, an original for GMA News and Public Affairs. New episodes will stream every Thursday. Listen for free on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and other platforms.